At 30,000 feet, F-22s surround an unmarked jet in restricted airspace. Weapons lock on. The order comes through. If no response in 30 seconds, shoot it down. But just as the lead pilot's finger hovers over the trigger, a single word crackles through the radio, a call sign not heard in 3 years. In an instant, the kill order transforms into stunned silence, because the woman in that cockpit was declared dead. Yet now, she commands the sky once more, carrying secrets that could shatter everything they thought they knew. From which city in the world are you watching this video today? If this story of hidden truths and redemption speaks to you, consider subscribing for more tales of extraordinary courage in unexpected places. Senior Controller. Delaney Vauclain's eyes narrowed at the flashing alert on her monitor. 3 years at NORAD's command center had taught her to distinguish between routine violations and genuine threats. This was neither. Unidentified aircraft entering restricted airspace over the Alaskan Defense Zone, she announced, her voice cutting through the low hum of the control room. Mach 1.4, no transponder, no flight plan. Colonel Thaddeus Renwick materialized beside her station, his perpetual scowl deepening the lines on his weathered face. At 57, the decorated veteran had seen enough international incidents to last several lifetimes. Origin? He demanded. Delaney's fingers flew across her keyboard. Trajectory suggests Russian airspace, sir, but the flight pattern doesn't match any known military or civilian craft. The aircraft's path appeared on the main display, a sleek, impossible line cutting through their defensive grid like it was designed specifically to navigate between sensor coverage. It's responding to none of our hails, Delaney added. 3 attempts on all emergency frequencies. Renwick studied the projection for exactly 5 seconds before making his decision. Deploy interceptors. Authorization Zulu 7. At Elmendorf Air Force Base, Squadron Leader Azura Blackwood was already halfway to her F-22 when the alert came through. Something in her gut had woken her 20 minutes earlier, the same instinct that had saved her life twice over hostile territory. Suit up, she called to her squadron as they rushed across the tarmac. Unidentified craft breaching sovereign airspace. Rules of engagement. Force down or neutralize. Lieutenant Orion Calloway fell into step beside her. Russians testing our response time again? If it were Russians, they'd want us to know it was them, Azura replied, reaching into her flight suit to ensure her lucky charm was secure, a photograph of her graduating class from the Air Force Academy. 7 women, 6 faces clearly visible, 1 deliberately obscured. As they climbed into their aircraft, Azura caught a glimpse of the Alaskan sky, clear blue with scattered clouds, perfect visibility, perfect hunting conditions. 30,000 feet above, gloved hands adjusted controls with practiced precision. The unmarked jet, matte black with no insignia, moved with a grace that defied its speed. Inside the cockpit, environmental systems hummed as the lone pilot checked coordinates on a display unlike any standard military configuration. A notification flashed. Interceptors deployed. The pilot made no attempt to change course. Fox 3, on my wing. Fox 2, maintain distance, Azura instructed as her squadron surrounded the intruder. The mysterious aircraft continued its unwavering path, cutting through the sky as if the F-22s were merely an inconvenience. Azura's voice was firm over the radio. This is the United States Air Force. You are in restricted airspace. Identify yourself immediately and follow our escort to designated landing coordinates. Silence answered her. I repeat, identify yourself, or we will be forced to take defensive action. Nothing. At NORAD, Colonel Renwick watched the confrontation unfold on the tactical display. Final warning, Squadron Leader Blackwood, then your weapons free. Copy that, Azura responded, though something troubled her about the intruder's flight pattern. There was a rhythm to its movements, a signature quality that tugged at her memory. Unidentified aircraft, this is your final warning. Respond or we will open fire in 30 seconds. In the command center, Delaney noticed it too, a subtle pattern in the intruder's minute course corrections. She began pulling classified flight signature records, her security clearance giving her access to files most controllers never saw. 20 seconds, Renwick counted. Azura's targeting system locked onto the aircraft. Her finger hovered over the trigger. Something's not right, she murmured. 10 seconds. came Renwick's voice. In the NORAD command center, Delaney's search yielded a result, a heavily redacted file with a classification level she'd never seen before. "Colonel," she called, her voice strained. "I need to show you something. 5 seconds. 4, 3, 2. The radio crackled with sudden static, and then a single word cut through the tension. "Phantom." Azura's hand froze above the weapons system. Around her, her squadron maintained formation, but she could sense their confusion. "Repeat," she demanded, barely trusting her own ears. The voice came again, stronger. "Call sign. Phantom. Authorization. Indigo, Black Star, 0. At NORAD, the command center fell into stunned silence. Colonel Renwick stared at the screen Delaney had turned toward him, showing a classified file with a single photograph. Commander Elowin Frost, the most decorated covert operations pilot in Air Force history, presumed dead 3 years ago. "It can't be," Renwick whispered. The mysterious aircraft suddenly banked right, executing a maneuver so complex and precise that it left the F-22 pilots in awe, a signature move only one pilot had ever perfected, a move Azura had studied for years but never successfully replicated. She guided her F-22 alongside the aircraft. Through the cockpit glass, she finally caught a glimpse of the pilot, oxygen mask covering most of the face, but the eyes, those eyes were unmistakable. The same eyes from the photograph tucked against her heart, the face she and her fellow pilots had deliberately obscured not out of disrespect, but out of hope. "All units," came Renwick's voice, now carrying an edge of disbelief. "Clear airspace and provide escort. Authorization level midnight." "Sir?" Lieutenant Calloway questioned, confusion evident. Azura responded instead, unable to keep the awe from her voice. "Stand down, Lieutenant. That's not an enemy." She switched to a private channel, one she hadn't used in 3 years. "Welcome home, Commander." The secure hangar at Elmendorf had been cleared of all non-essential personnel. Armed guards formed a perimeter as the mysterious aircraft taxied to a stop, its engine winding down with an unfamiliar pitch. Military officials had assembled with unprecedented speed: Colonel Renwick, base commanders, and most notably, General Zephyrin Blackwell, whose presence alone signified the gravity of the moment. At 64, the general had survived enough political storms and battlefield conflicts to make lesser officers tremble in her presence. The cockpit opened with a hydraulic hiss. A figure emerged slowly, removing a helmet to reveal close-cropped hair and a face marked by a scar that hadn't been there 3 years earlier. Commander Elowin Frost descended the ladder with a metal case handcuffed to her wrist, her movements betraying the toll of whatever journey had kept her away. Silence dominated the hangar as she approached the waiting officials. General Blackwell stepped forward. 3 years of radio silence, Commander, the general said, her expression unreadable. "You were declared dead." "I had to be," Elowin responded, her voice raspy from disuse or perhaps from something more sinister. "They were watching everything." She held up the handcuffed case. "This contains evidence of a conspiracy within our own intelligence community. 3 years ago, I didn't go down in the South China Sea. I went dark to find the truth." Using her free hand, she produced a key and unlocked the case, revealing a specialized data drive. Senior officials selling classified flight paths and security protocols. They tried to kill me when I stumbled onto their operation. I've spent 3 years gathering proof and identifying everyone involved. General Blackwell took the drive, examining it briefly before meeting Elowin's gaze. For a moment, the hangar remained perfectly still, the tension palpable as everyone waited for the general's response. Without warning, General Blackwell raised her right hand in a formal salute. "Commander Frost." The gesture rippled through the hangar. One by one, every officer present, including those who had doubted her, who had believed the official story of her failure and death, stood at attention and saluted. Colonel Renwick was among the last, his salute accompanied by a nod of respect and perhaps a silent apology. Azura approached after the formalities had concluded. She removed the photograph from her flight suit and held it out. "We never replaced you," she said simply, showing Elowin the image where her face had been deliberately obscured. "We knew you'd come back." Elowin touched the photograph, a rare emotion crossing her features. "You kept the faith." "You taught us that loyalty outlasts paperwork," Azura replied. "Even death certificates." In a secure briefing room deep within Elmendorf Air Force Base, Commander Elowen Frost stood before a projection of satellite imagery, her posture rigid despite the exhaustion evident in her eyes. The handcuffed case had been removed, its contents now secured in military intelligence systems with the highest clearance protocols. Operation Blackfish began as routine surveillance, Elowen explained to the small group of senior officials. My team was tracking unusual shipping patterns in the South China Sea when we intercepted encrypted communications that shouldn't have existed. She gestured to a series of coordinates that appeared on screen. These classified flight paths were being transmitted to unauthorized recipients. When I reported the breach to command, I was ordered to stand down. Colonel Renwick shifted uncomfortably in his seat. Who issued that order? General Vernon Hale, Elowen replied without hesitation. The same man who declared me killed in action when my jet disappeared from radar. A murmur passed through the assembled officers. General Hale had retired with full honors 18 months ago, his reputation untarnished. I needed everyone to believe I was dead, Elowen continued. It was the only way to move freely, to follow the money without alerting those involved. 3 years of staying in shadows, changing identities, gathering evidence. General Blackwell studied the data scrolling across her tablet. This implicates 12 high-ranking officials across 3 branches of service and 2 intelligence agencies. The damage to national security is incalculable. And the evidence is irrefutable, Elowen added. Account numbers, meeting recordings, digital fingerprints. Everything you need for quiet arrests and contained trials. The room fell silent as the implications settled over them. A conspiracy of this magnitude would shake the foundations of military command structure if it became public. How did you survive? Azura asked the question that had been burning within her since she'd first recognized those eyes behind the cockpit glass. Your jet was confirmed destroyed. A ghost of a smile crossed Elowen's face. That prototype you just escorted in? I've been developing it for years under a black budget program. When I realized I was being targeted, I staged my own downing and went off-grid. Alone? Renwick pressed. I had one contact, Elowen admitted. Captain Lairk Merritt, Communications Division. She maintained a secure channel for data drops. Without her, I wouldn't have survived the first month. General Blackwell nodded. Captain Merritt was found dead in her apartment 4 months ago. Apparent suicide. Elowen's expression hardened. There was nothing apparent about it. They discovered her connection to me and eliminated her. That's when I knew I had to accelerate my timeline and come in. The briefing continued for hours, each revelation more damning than the last. A network of corruption extending into the highest echelons of military command, selling not just flight paths but weapon specifications, defense grid vulnerabilities, and deployment schedules to the highest bidders. When the meeting finally adjourned, Elowen found herself alone with Colonel Renwick in the empty briefing room. The tension between them was palpable, years of unspoken history hanging in the air. You were right, Renwick said finally, breaking the silence. 3 years ago, when you came to me with suspicions about irregularities in the communication logs, I dismissed your concerns. You followed protocol, Elowen replied, her tone neutral. Protocol that nearly got you killed. Renwick ran a hand over his face, suddenly looking every one of his 57 years. I should have listened. Would it have changed anything? Elowen asked. They had contingencies for every scenario, including you believing me. Before Renwick could respond, Azura appeared in the doorway. Commander, your quarters are ready. Medical team is standing by for evaluation. Elowen nodded, gathering her materials. We'll continue this tomorrow, Colonel. As she followed Azura through the corridors of the base, Elowen took in the familiar surroundings that now felt strangely foreign. 3 years in exile had changed her in ways she was only beginning to understand. Your old team has been notified of your return, Azura said as they walked. Classified briefing, of course, limited to those with appropriate clearance. How many remained? 4 of us, Azura replied. Myself, Calloway, Taven, and Quineth. The others were reassigned after you were declared dead. They reached a nondescript door at the end of a secure wing. Azura entered a code, and the door slid open to reveal modest quarters with basic amenities. It's not much, Azura said apologetically. It's more than I've had in 3 years, Elowen replied, stepping inside. She surveyed the room, instinctively checking sight lines and exit points, habits that had kept her alive while operating in hostile territory. Azura hesitated at the threshold. May I ask something, Commander? Elowen nodded. When you transmitted your call sign today, why did you wait until the last possible second? 5 more seconds and I would have fired. Elowen set down the few belongings she carried. I needed to see if the chain of command had been cleaned up in my absence. If my call sign and authorization code weren't immediately recognized and respected, it would have told me the corruption went even deeper than I'd uncovered. You risked your life on a test? I've been risking my life every day for 3 years, Squadron Leader. Today was no different. Azura processed this, then straightened her posture. The medical team is ready whenever you are. After that, there's someone else who wants to see you. Curiosity flickered across Elowen's face. Who? Admiral Riviere. He flew in from Washington as soon as he heard about your return. Something unreadable passed through Elowen's eyes. Niall is here? Arrived 20 minutes ago. He's with General Blackwell now, reviewing your evidence. After a brief but thorough medical examination that revealed the extent of what Elowen's body had endured during her self-imposed exile, multiple healed fractures and a collection of scars that told stories she wasn't yet ready to share, she was cleared for the meeting that would determine the next phase of the operation. The conference room was sealed, electronic countermeasures ensuring that no surveillance, internal or external, could penetrate its walls. Admiral Niall Riviere stood when Elowen entered, his usually impassive face showing a rare moment of emotion. Commander Frost, he said formally, though his voice carried warmth that belied the professional address. Welcome back to the land of the living. Admiral, Elowen acknowledged with a nod. They had history, complex and layered, that predated her disappearance. Mentor and protege, later colleagues, and something more that had never been fully defined before her mission went sideways. General Blackwell observed the exchange with interest before redirecting attention to the matter at hand. We've reviewed your evidence, Commander. Arrest protocols are being implemented for all individuals named in your files, quietly, discreetly. And General Hale? Elowen asked. Already in custody, Admiral Riviere confirmed. Picked up at his mountain retreat 2 hours ago. He's being held at a secure facility under counterintelligence protocols. Elowen absorbed this, her expression carefully neutral despite the weight lifting from her shoulders. 3 years of isolation and vigilance, always looking over her shoulder, always one step ahead of those who wanted her silenced permanently, had culminated in this moment. There's still the question of foreign involvement, she said, focusing on the mission rather than the personal victory. The buyers were varied, but patterns suggest a coordinated effort by multiple hostile intelligence services. Admiral Riviere nodded. That's phase 2 of the operation. And the reason I'm here. He glanced at General Blackwell, who gave a slight nod of approval. We want you to lead the counterintelligence effort, Commander. You've already done the groundwork. You know the players better than anyone. Elowen hadn't expected this. She'd anticipated debriefing, possibly reassignment, or even early retirement given the sensitivity of what she'd uncovered. Not a promotion. With respect, Admiral, I've been operating outside the chain of command for 3 years. My methods wouldn't be considered orthodox. Orthodox methods didn't uncover this conspiracy, General Blackwell pointed out. Orthodox methods declared you dead and let traitors continue selling our secrets. A knock at the door interrupted them. After security verification, Azura entered with a sealed file bearing the highest classification markings. The preliminary analysis of the aircraft, sir, she reported, handing the file to Admiral Riviere. Engineering team's findings. Riviere reviewed the documents, his eyebrows rising slightly. You've been busy, Commander. This technology is at least a decade ahead of our current deployment capabilities. Necessity breeds innovation, Elowen replied simply. When you can't trust standard channels, you create new ones. The Admiral closed the file. All the more reason for you to lead this operation. You've already demonstrated exceptional resourcefulness under impossible conditions. Elowen looked between the Admiral and the General, then to Azura, who stood at attention nearby. After 3 years of operating alone, the prospect of commanding a team again, of working within the system she'd fought to protect despite its flaws, felt both foreign and familiar. When do we start? She asked. 6 months passed in a carefully orchestrated operation that systematically dismantled the network Elowen had uncovered. Each arrest was conducted with surgical precision, the suspects detained simultaneously to prevent warning signals from reaching their co-conspirators. Public statements cited routine reassignments or sudden retirements, the truth concealed behind classification levels few could access. In a secure facility beneath the Pentagon, Elowen stood before a holographic display showing the connections her team had mapped between domestic traders and their international buyers. Red lines traced the flow of information. Blue lines followed money transfers, forming an intricate web that spanned continents. "The final piece," she said, highlighting a node that pulsed at the edge of the network. "Operative codenamed Kingfisher, the broker who connected our people with foreign intelligence." Admiral Riviere studied the display, hands clasped behind his back. "Do we have confirmation on identity?" "Facial recognition from surveillance in Zurich, biometric data from the Istanbul meeting." Elowen enlarged an image, revealing a distinguished man in his 60s, silver-haired and impeccably dressed. "Former NSA, retired 8 years ago, Harlan Voss." Azura, now serving as Elowen's second-in-command, added, "He's scheduled to attend a private security conference in Geneva next week. It's our best opportunity for a clean extraction." The Admiral nodded. "Plan the operation. Full resources, your discretion on team composition." "Sir," Elowen acknowledged, already mentally selecting the operatives she would need. Over the past months, she had assembled a team of specialists she personally vetted, individuals whose loyalty was to country rather than career advancement. It was a lesson hard-learned during her years in exile. Trust was earned, not conferred by rank or position. After the Admiral departed, Azura remained behind, reviewing the operational parameters on her tablet. "Commander, there's something else you should see." She transferred a file to the main display. "General Hale's interrogation transcripts." Elowen scanned the document, her expression darkening. "He's still denying direct knowledge of the attempt on my life. But he admits to issuing the stand-down order when you reported the security breach," Azura pointed out. "Claims he was following directions from above." "Convenient," Elowen murmured. "Especially since the above he referenced died of a stroke 2 years ago and can't confirm or deny." Azura hesitated before asking the question that had lingered since Elowen's return. "Do you ever regret it? Going dark instead of trying to fight within the system?" Elowen considered the question, her gaze drifting to the wall of names they'd accumulated, officials across multiple agencies who had betrayed their oaths for profit. The system was compromised. Fighting within it would have been fighting with my hands tied against opponents who controlled the rules. She turned to face her former student. "Sometimes the only way to save something is to step outside it, to see it clearly from a distance." The preparation for the Geneva operation consumed the next week. Elowen personally reviewed every detail, from extraction routes to contingency plans for multiple scenarios. The target was high value, not just for the information he could provide about remaining network elements, but as the final proof needed for the closed tribunals that would deliver justice without compromising national security. The night before departure, Elowen found herself in the empty briefing room, reviewing the operation timeline one last time. The sound of the door opening drew her attention. Admiral Riviere entered, carrying 2 cups of coffee. "Thought you might need this," he said, placing one before her. "You've been at it for 18 hours straight." "Old habits," Elowen replied, accepting the coffee with a nod of thanks. "In the field, thoroughness kept me alive." The Admiral took a seat across from her. In the months since her return, their interactions had been strictly professional, the weight of their shared past carefully set aside in favor of the mission. But tonight, with the operation hours away from execution, something in the air between them shifted. "The tribunal dates have been set," Riviere said after a moment. "Once Voss is secured, we can move forward with the final phase." Elowen nodded. "And then?" "And then we rebuild," he replied. "New protocols, restructured command chains, enhanced internal monitoring." "Systems can be circumvented," Elowen observed, "by the same people tasked with maintaining them." "Which is why the human element matters more," Riviere countered. "People like you, who remember what they're fighting for beyond career advancement or political leverage." A rare smile touched Elowen's lips. "That sounds suspiciously like the speech you gave at the Academy graduation 15 years ago." "I meant it then," Riviere said, holding her gaze. "I mean it now. Integrity can't be systematized. It has to be lived." The moment stretched between them, laden with unspoken words. Finally, Elowen returned her attention to the mission briefing. Wheels up at 0500. You'll have secure channel updates every 12 hours. The Admiral recognized the shift back to professional territory and respected it. Good hunting, Commander. The Geneva operation proceeded with the precision that had become Elowen's hallmark. Harlan Voss was extracted from his hotel suite without incident, the security conference continuing unaware that one of its distinguished attendees had been replaced by an operative with similar build and features, ensuring his absence wouldn't be noted for at least 24 hours. In a secure facility outside Bern, Voss sat across from Elowen in an interrogation room designed for comfort rather than intimidation. His initial shock at seeing her had confirmed what she'd long suspected. He had been directly involved in the attempt on her life. "You should be dead," he said, his cultured voice betraying only mild surprise rather than the fear she might have expected. "Many people should be things they're not," Elowen replied evenly. "Loyal, for instance." Voss smiled thinly. "Loyalty is relative, Commander. I served my country for 30 years before retirement. What I did afterward was simply business." "Selling flight paths that got pilots killed isn't business," Elowen countered. "It's treason." "Such black and white thinking," Voss sighed. "The world operates in shades of gray, always has." Elowen leaned forward. "I didn't bring you in for philosophical debates. I want the remaining network nodes, the ones you kept off electronic channels, names, contact protocols, dead drops." "And why would I provide those?" "Because contrary to what you believe, I'm offering you a choice," Elowen said. "Cooperate, and you'll face a closed tribunal with the possibility of a reduced sentence. Refuse, and you'll be publicly tried for treason with the full evidence we've assembled." Voss's confident demeanor faltered slightly. "You're bluffing. They'd never allow a public trial. Too many secrets would be exposed." "Test me," Elowen suggested calmly. "See what happens when you underestimate someone you already failed to kill once." The interrogation continued for hours, a careful dance of pressure and patience. By the time Elowen emerged, she had what she needed, the final pieces that would complete the puzzle she'd spent 3 years assembling. The return flight to Washington carried not just a high-value asset, but the culmination of an operation that had consumed Elowen's life. As the military transport cruised at altitude, she found a moment of quiet reflection in the rear of the aircraft. Azura joined her, taking the seat opposite. "Mission accomplished, Commander." "This phase," Elowen corrected. "There's still the tribunals, the sentencing, the restructuring." "But you did it," Azura insisted. "You came back from the dead and brought down an entire network that thought they were untouchable." Elowen gazed out the small window at the clouds below. "Not alone." 1 month later, in a ceremony attended only by those with the highest security clearances, Commander Elowen Frost received a medal that didn't officially exist. The conspiracy she had uncovered had been neutralized, the perpetrators sentenced in classified proceedings that would never reach public records. As she stood to address the small gathering, not politicians or press, but the pilots and operators who had continued to believe in her, Elowen looked more like herself again, though the experiences of the past 3 years had left permanent marks both visible and invisible. "3 years ago, I made a choice that separated me from everything I knew," she began. "I didn't do it for recognition. I did it because sometimes the hardest path is the only right one." She looked at the faces before her, the people who had carried on in her absence, who had protected her memory when others would have tarnished it. "Integrity isn't measured by what you do when everyone's watching," she continued, unpinning the medal from her uniform. "It's what you do when no one is." With deliberate movements, she crossed to where Azura stood and pinned the medal onto her former student's uniform. "The next generation needs to know that." As the ceremony concluded, the small group moved outside to the airfield. Above them, fighter jets screamed past in perfect formation with one notable gap. The missing man formation, once performed in Elowen's memory, now honored those who had fallen uncovering the truth she had brought home. Elowen and Azura stood side by side, watching the aircraft disappear into the distance. "What now, Commander?" Azura asked. Elowen's gaze remained fixed on the horizon. "Now we keep flying. Someone always needs to guard the boundaries." Above them, the sky stretched endlessly blue, the same sky that had witnessed her return, the same sky that would watch over whatever came next.